Hi there! Welcome to my presentation on how to be an emotion coach for your child. I'm really glad that you've chosen to listen to this presentation. I'm going to give you the opportunity to learn how to be an emotion coach for your child. I'm also really excited for your child that they have an adult in their life that cares enough to learn how to be an emotion coach for them. So let's get started. First, we need to figure out what is an emotion coach. So an emotion coach is anybody who helps a child understand and regulate their emotions. This can be a guardian, a parent, teacher, or any other trusted adult in a child's life. So your child is super lucky because they have someone who is ready to become their emotion coach. So why should you become an emotion coach? There are three main reasons why your child needs you to become an emotion coach. So number one, children have a better chance at experiencing overall life satisfaction. Your child will be more likely to experience positive emotions, establish meaningful relationships and connections, and find a sense of accomplishment and purpose in life. So these are huge qualities that children need to attain in order to have overall general life satisfaction, and you can help them get that. Secondly, children can interact more positively with their environment. So children are more attentive and they can find activities and interests that are meaningful to them. So when children understand how to regulate their emotions, they can find more meaning in their life. And thirdly, children experience greater success academically and socially. Because children can learn how to regulate their emotions, they'll learn how to have greater impulse control and engage in fewer destructive behaviors, which makes it easier for them to establish positive social connections and focus on learning challenges. So these are three big reasons why your child needs an emotion coach, and I'm really glad that you have decided to become one for them. So what does an emotion coach do? An emotion coach does three things. First, they approach emotions from a place of empathy. So any emotion or any emotional event that your child experiences, an emotion coach approaches from a place of empathy and compassion. An emotion coach never passes judgment on their child or their child's feelings, and they always accept their child's feelings just as they are. Number two, they view emotional events as an opportunity to connect and teach. So rather than viewing emotions as scary or shameful experiences, and rather than ignoring or turning away from emotions, emotion coaches use emotional events to teach their child valuable lessons. In doing so, emotion coaches establish a much stronger connection with their child. So when you can take the time to be vulnerable and empathetic with your child and talk through emotional events with them, you are way more likely to establish a stronger connection with your child. And thirdly, an emotion coach coaches their child through recognizing, labeling, and regulating emotions. Recognizing and labeling emotions is an essential step in helping a child understand and regulate their emotions. So if we're going to help a child understand and regulate their emotions, they have to first be able to recognize them and label them. So if we want our children to be happy in life, there are some things that we need to do. Your ability to detect, react to, promote, and provide instruction about emotional regulation has the greatest predictive power over your baby's future happiness. I think I can speak for all of us when I say we would all like our children to grow up as happy, healthy children. So what happens if we don't detect, react to, promote, and provide instruction about emotional regulation? What happens when we don't act as an emotion coach? Simply put, our children won't understand their emotions. When we don't understand our emotions, we can't regulate our emotions. When we can't regulate our emotions, we lack the ability to think rationally, to problem solve, and to develop secure attachments or secure relationships. Even worse is that when a child experiences emotional dysregulation, they can experience rumination, emotional suppression, and a lack of resiliency, and they can experience anxiety and depression. So those are some pretty heavy things that our children can experience if they don't know how to regulate their emotions. I think I speak for all of us again is when I say I don't want my child to experience rumination, suppression, anxiety, or depression. So there are some things that we can do to help our children. But what happens when we do act as an emotion coach? Our children are more likely to develop stronger relationships and compassion for others. So when children understand their own emotions, they can understand the emotions of their friends and family, which leads to stronger and more meaningful relationships and connections. When we act as an emotion coach, our children are more likely to develop stronger attentiveness skills, and they're more likely to have stronger engagement and self-control. So children become less distracted and more motivated when they can self-regulate. And finally, when we act as an emotion coach, we can help our children develop a stronger sense of personal worth, resiliency, and grit. Our children are less likely to be afraid of failure. Children can try something new, fail, and try again, rather than feeling defeated and worthless by their negative emotions. When children have an emotion coach and when they can regulate their emotions, they see value in themselves. So how do we become an emotion coach? There are 3 key steps to becoming an emotion coach. First, we have to always start from a place of compassion. Next, we need to validate and label emotions. And number 3, we need to set limits for misbehavior. So we will learn how to do all 3 of these things today. But let's start with compassion first. So only when we practice self-compassion can we show true compassion for others. At bottom, compassion refers to the desire to acknowledge and help those who are suffering. So the desire to relieve suffering is the signature quality driving compassionate people. Self-compassion then involves the same feeling but directed towards yourself. You're being self-compassionate when you're trying to acknowledge, help, or be kind to yourself in moments of adversity, discomfort, or failure. Often this means treating and talking to yourself with the same loving kindness that you would offer a close friend. It also involves recognizing and validating your own feelings moment by moment when needed, especially when you're going through a tough emotional event, or in our case, when your child is going through a tough emotional event. So the key point here is that without first practicing self-compassion, your displays of compassion for others will often be difficult, superficial, or insincere. If you don't take your own suffering seriously, it's really unlikely that you'll take the suffering of others seriously. So as emotion coaches, we have to first practice self-compassion, and then we will be able to practice compassion for others. So compassion for our children. Let's look at an example to figure out how this works. So here's our example. You and your 5-year-old daughter are at the grocery store. Your cart is full, the store is jam-packed, it's nearing dinner time, and you're both getting really grumpy and really hungry. When you get to the checkout line, your child spots the chocolate bars and asks to have one. Knowing that the chocolate bar will spoil her dinner, you say that no, she can't have one right now. Your child is grumpy, hungry, and angry, and she does not understand why she can't have one. Naturally, she throws a tantrum on the floor in the checkout line. You start to notice that lots of people are looking at you. You feel annoyed, angry, and now you're feeling embarrassed. Here are 2 ways that this scenario can play out. So situation number 1. Your embarrassment takes over, and you instantly scold your child for not using her manners. You tell her that she is a bad girl, and now there is no way she's getting a chocolate bar. You exert your authority, demanding that she gets up off the floor. Unfortunately for you, she doesn't. She continues crying on the floor, and you continue to feel humiliated, angry, and hungry. Each of your emotions escalate to their natural tipping point. Here's situation number 2. Your embarrassment takes over. Before saying anything to your child, you take a deep breath. You say to yourself, yep, this situation sucks. I'm tired and I am hungry too, and now I'm feeling embarrassed. I want to go home, and so does my daughter. Other people would feel embarrassed and frustrated right now too. You take another deep breath, and you feel a little bit better. Now, you can kneel down to your daughter, rub her back, and say, I understand that you're feeling upset that you can't have a chocolate bar. I know that you feel hungry and tired and that you just want to go home. So do I. It's okay to feel upset right now, but it's not okay to lie on the floor. You can sit in the cart or stand beside me. So in the first situation, there is no self-compassion or compassion. No one's feelings are being labeled or validated. There is also no connection being made between mom and child. During this emotional event, both the parent and the child experience negative emotions, and neither of them are made to feel any better. Mom is hiding from her emotions, making it impossible for her daughter to understand her own. Everybody's negative emotions escalate. In the second situation, though, mom comforts and validates herself first. She practices self-compassion first. Because mom can acknowledge her own suffering in the situation, she is better able to understand and empathize with her child's emotional display. She understands why her child is throwing a tantrum. Mom is empowered to respond to her child with clarity and kindness rather than shame and ridicule. Instead of hiding from negative feelings and attacking her child's character, mom leans into discomfort, separates her child's behavior from her child's character, and establishes an emotional connection with her daughter. In this scenario, research shows that mom has a much better chance at diffusing her child's emotional event while also building her daughter's future resiliency and grit. So self-compassion is paramount when acting as an emotion coach because it allows us to practice more genuine compassion for our children. In doing so, we can better understand their struggles, frustrations, anxieties, and displays of emotions, and we're better able to acknowledge and process uncomfortable feelings, rather than attempting to rush our children out of discomfort in order to escape or avoid a situation. 95% of emotion coaching is the ability to understand and empathize with our children. The only way we'll be able to empathize and understand our children is if we first do the same with ourselves. So as emotion coaches, we must practice self-compassion first before we can practice compassion with our children. So the next step to becoming an emotion coach, labeling and validating emotions. We're humans, so we experience emotions on a moment-by-moment basis. Sometimes we experience many different emotions in even just 1 hour. Since emotions are a defining feature in our life, in order for us to live comfortably and positively, we must understand our emotions. So children can only regulate their emotions if they've been labeled and validated, and if they understand their emotions. Let's recall that our goal as an emotion coach is to help our children understand and regulate those emotions. The only way to do this is by acknowledging, labeling, and validating emotions. But let's be clear. When we label and validate emotions, there are some things to do and some things that we do not do. One way of labeling and validating emotions is to simply talk about emotions with our children. This is called emotion talk. Unfortunately, though, many of us adults are so uncomfortable with our own emotions that we tend to shy away from emotion talk with our children because it makes us uncomfortable. What's worse, we often resort to dismissal as our go-to strategy for dealing with our children's emotions. I understand dismissal is naturally tempting and very easy. Just tell a child not to feel what they're feeling. The logic is that if we tell a child not to feel what they're feeling, your child will agree and they'll just say that they feel differently. Then we don't have to deal with the uncomfortable or negative way that they're actually feeling. Dismissal is not a form of labeling or validating. This is what dismissal sounds like. It's okay, don't be sad. Or, don't worry, you'll feel better soon. These are not examples of labeling or validating. Dismissal involves covering up or glossing over emotions, simply trying to make them go away as fast as possible. Unfortunately, after years of dismissing your child's emotions, they'll start to feel confused and uncomfortable. And they'll start to suppress their true feelings, and they may even start to experience anxiety, guilt, or shame about the way they feel. Your child will also likely look to other people for validation, just to make sure that what they're feeling is what they should be feeling in a given situation. This makes us feel less secure about ourselves, our worth, and our ability to navigate life independently, securely, and successfully. What's worse, these feelings set in just as a child's emotions are evolving to reflect less trivial things and more serious situations, like those situations experienced as a teenager or a young adult. So an emotion coach labels and validates their child's emotion, and in turn models for their children how to cope with these emotions themselves. Here are some key phrases parents or emotion coaches might say when they are labeling emotions. It looks like you're feeling angry. I understand why you're feeling nervous. There's a word for this feeling. It's called jealousy. I can see that you're feeling scared. That would make me feel embarrassed. Are you feeling embarrassed? So let's take note here. All labeling and validating is done in a calm voice, and we need to make sure that we are labeling and validating without passing judgment. So let's look at our grocery store example again. You and your child are both hungry and tired, and you want to leave the grocery store. You're at the checkout line when your child asks for a chocolate bar, but you tell her she can't have one right now. She drops to the floor and has a tantrum. So again, there are two ways that this can play out. Now let's look at situation number one when we are using dismissal. The parent might say something like, "No, you can't have a chocolate bar right now, especially not after this behavior. Besides, don't be sad. We can have ice cream after we have dinner, if you're a good girl. Get up off the floor or we won't be having any ice cream." Situation number two, where we're using labeling and validating. I can see that you're feeling upset because you can't have a chocolate bar. I know that you feel tired and hungry and that you just want to go home. So do I. It's okay to feel upset, but it's not okay to lie on the floor. You can sit in the cart or stand beside me. So in the first situation, mom doesn't validate or label the child's feelings. She dismisses them, and she tries bribing her daughter with an ice cream and subtly shames her for acting the way she is. In the second situation, the mom engages in emotion talk, so she leans into the discomfort of the negative feelings. She teaches her child that emotions are real and they're important, and that they can be acknowledged and shared, and that there's nothing to be ashamed of. Emotion talk tells the child that it's normal and acceptable to experience difficult emotions, but that it's not okay to lie on the floor. This approach shows a child's brain to learn early on that difficult emotions are a normal and shared human experience. Importantly, they can also come to see that there are constructive and deconstructive ways of coping with difficult emotions. This is a really important lesson in self-control that children especially need for later on in life. So at the end of the day, all your child really wants and needs is for you to sit with them in the discomfort of their tough or negative emotions. And they just want you to accept them and their feelings as they are. This is what an emotion coach does. So sadness from inside out shows us how to do exactly that. She sits with Bing Bong in his discomfort.
The stuffed animal Hall of Fame! My rocket! Wait, Riley and I were still using that rocket. It still has some song power left. Who's your friend who likes to play? No, you can't take my rocket to the dump. Riley and I are going to the moon. Riley can't be done with me.
Hey, it's gonna be okay. We can fix this. We just need to get back to headquarters. Which way to the train station?
I had a whole trip planned for us.
Hey, who's ticklish, huh? Here comes the tickle monster. Hey, Bing Bong, look at this. Oh, here's a fun game. You point to the train station and we all go there. Won't that be fun? Come on, let's go to the train station.
I'm sorry they took your rocket. They took something that you loved. It's gone. Forever.
Sadness. Don't make him feel worse.
Sorry.
It's all I had left of Riley.
I bet you and Riley had great adventures.
Oh, they were wonderful. Once we flew back in time. We had breakfast twice that day.
Sadness.
It sounds amazing. I bet Riley liked it.
Oh, she did. We were best friends.
Yeah, it's sad.
I'm okay now. Come on. The train station is this way.
How did you do that?
I don't know. He was sad, so I listened to what...
Hey! There's the train!
So here sadness shows us exactly how to label and validate emotions. Joy, on the other hand, shows us exactly how to dismiss and deny emotions. She tries to cover up Bing Bong's feelings, distract him, and get him to do something else. But sadness, she sits with Bing Bong in his discomfort, she labels his feelings, and she's just there with him to show him that she accepts his feelings just as they are. And this is one thing that we need to remember as emotion coaches. Oftentimes, children just want our feelings labeled and validated. They just want you to sit there with them. And once we do that, they can begin to start to feel better. Another really important thing that we need to know as emotion coaches, that we need to remember, is that feelings, no matter what they are always accepted. We must always accept our child's feelings. But this does not mean that we need to accept all of the behavior that is attached with those feelings. So when there is unacceptable behavior attached with a strong feeling, we need to set limits for that misbehavior. So let me repeat that. Just because we accept and value all emotions does not mean that we accept all behavior. A key part of emotion coaching is using limits to guide behavior. So a limit is a guideline or expectation for behavior. Limits are simply stated, and they should be directly related to the behavior so that children understand what is expected of them. For example, if a child is playing in the front yard, an easy to understand limit would be, we can play on the grass, but not in the street. Cars drive in the street, and that could be dangerous. So this limit is very clear, and the child can understand that the grass is safe, but the street is not. So limits are always logical, and they help children feel safe and confident. Limits help children understand what they can and cannot do. So here are some more examples. These limits are clearly defined, and they are followed up with a reason. Markers are for paper only. Drawing on the floor can wreck the floor because the marker won't come off. We can play in the yard, but not in the street. The street is too busy and we could get hurt. You can play with the ball outside only. If you play with the ball inside, something might get broken. So it's really important for us as emotion coaches to be consistent, kind, but firm with our limits. When we are consistent and firm, children know what to expect, and they feel more safe and confident. Children are also more likely to follow instructions when they know that you will follow up with a consequence. If you are inconsistent about follow-up and consequences, children are more likely to test, stretch, or disregard the limits. So let's look at our grocery store example again. So in the first situation, there's no limit setting. So it might sound something like this. No, I'm sorry, you can't have a chocolate bar right now. We'll go for ice cream after dinner. Get up off the floor, or you won't be having any ice cream. Here's situation number 2 that has a limit and an explanation. I understand that you're feeling upset that you can't have a chocolate bar. It's okay to feel upset, but it's not okay to lie on the floor because you could get hurt or you could hurt someone else. You can sit in the cart or stand beside me. So in the first situation, there's no guideline or expectation for how the child is to behave when she feels upset in the grocery store. All the mother has done is threaten the child with a punishment. She has used a threat in hopes that her child will behave. In the second situation, the mother validates and labels her child's feelings first, and then she explains why lying on the floor is not okay. And she gives her child two options instead: sitting in the cart or standing beside mom. So there are some key steps to setting limits. Setting limits is so important to emotion coaching because limits help our children understand what they can and cannot do. So in the grocery store example, when we set limits for when we're feeling upset at the grocery store, our children understand that it's okay to feel upset at the grocery store, but when I'm feeling upset at the grocery store, I can't lie on the floor. So let's go through a grocery store example and figure out how we can set limits. So the first step to setting limits is to recognize and label your child's feelings. This is what we always have to do first. And remember, emotion coaches accept any and all feelings, but not necessarily all behavior. And if you need to, remember to validate your own feelings first so that you can interact more positively with your child. So in the grocery store example, we might say something like this: I understand that you're feeling upset because you can't have a chocolate bar. Number 2, we need to state what's acceptable and what's unacceptable. Be sure to let your child know that his or her feelings are acceptable, but the behavior is not. So in the grocery store example, we could say, it's okay to feel upset, but it's not okay to lie on the floor. Number 3, we have to always give a reason for the limit. So we might say, it's not okay to lie on the floor because you could get hurt or you could hurt someone else. So that is a reason for our limit. That's our reason as to why it's not okay to lie on the floor. And number 4, we always need to emphasize the specific positive behavior that we want to see. And children need us to clearly state for them what they can or can't do. So for example, we said to our child, you can sit in the cart or stand beside me. So the child understands that it's okay to feel upset, it's not okay to lie on the floor, but it is okay to sit in the cart or stand beside her mom. So let's recap. There are three main things to do to become an emotion coach. We start from a place of compassion, we validate and label emotions, and we set limits for misbehavior. An emotion coach always uses a calm and non-judgmental voice. And an emotion coach might say something like, it looks like you're feeling nervous. Or, I can understand why you're feeling upset. Or, this situation would make me feel sad. Are you feeling sad? So if we want our children to live happy and meaningful lives, we can help them by becoming their emotion coach and by helping them learn to regulate their emotions. I hope that you've learned how to become an emotion coach today. I hope that you're feeling prepared and excited to help your child regulate his or her emotions. If you're looking for more resources that you can use to help you become an emotion coach, here are some great resources and books for parents or emotion coaches. Thank you so much for listening today, and I wish you the best of luck as you become an emotion coach for your child.